A few disclaimers before I get started with things. The video content that is used in this video is meant to be used just as visual representation. It should not be taken as any means of high-level skilled gameplay. And also on top of that, any gameplay footage in this video will become outdated here in the next coming months, since we will be getting Awakening patch that will make some significant changes to PvE and PvP alike. A very common question that gets asked in regards to PvP classes is, what are the best PvP classes in the context of Blade and Soul? There is an actual tier list that does change over time for 1v1, 3v3, and 6v6, but for the most part, this tier list is not going to matter to you. The reason why I say this is it is important that you play a class based on its toolkit and based on its playstyle, and not based on how much DPS it can do and its power rating in comparison to other classes. One of the best examples that I can personally give is when hybrid builds were still a thing in Blade and Soul. The Soul Fighter class was the newest class at that particular point in time. There was a skill revamp to where they put certain skills behind certain elements, which basically killed hybrid builds, and this really hurt Soul Fighters a lot. So much so to the point to where the class later on ended up having to get a revamp themselves. So with that being kept in mind, it is always important to play a class because you genuinely like it, because your class can get significantly buffed or significantly nerfed at any given point in time. Also, another thing is it is important to play the class that you like universally, because in this game, PvE and PvP are heavily intertwined with one another if you want to experience PvP to its fullest. If you are a person that is interested in getting into PvP, my personal recommendation would be to start off with Trial Arena. The reason why I say this is because for a while you may not have a good idea of what works and what doesn't work on a class by class basis, so this is a good opportunity to practice combos, get down muscle memory, etc, etc. Now I want to say as a disclaimer, the way that the bots operate are going to be different from how live players will play to a certain extent. This holds more weight for 6v6 content, which I will discuss later on in this video. In order to be decent at PvP, two videos that have significantly helped me out in the past is this tech chasing video and the CC overlapping video. I do feel like these are two very important videos to play, especially with the CC overlapping if you play a Sin, and then for the tech chasing is good for just about any class. I will post links to both of those videos down below in the description box just in case you want to check those out. Pretty much Trial Arena has almost all of the class bots available except for Gunner and Warrior, and each of these bots have 10 stages to them. The ideal or goal is to beat each of these bots in 1 minute and 59 seconds or less to get the 3-star rewards. And even if you are a player who mainly just does PvE, if you can at least beat the level 7 bot, the stage 7 bot I mean, you are going to get either legendary elements or legendary jewels, which you're going to need a lot of those for your gear anyways. In the event that you are struggling with a class and you're unfamiliar with its toolkit, Blade and Soul Tree is actually a really good site to go to figure out how the skills function, cooldowns, and things along those lines. So that should cut down on the process time that it's going to take you to learn these matchups and gain your muscle memory. Tower Infinity is the same thing as Trial Arena. The main difference here is you are going to be in a ranked mode against other players. So the goal here, just like Trial Arena, is to kill the bot as quickly as you can. The amount of floors that you go up per every bot killed is going to be anywhere from 1 to 10. Every single Tower Infinity ticket that you use, you will fight up to a maximum of 5 bots. Now let's say hypothetically you got yourself a whole bunch of tickets, your top floor you're satisfied with, and you just want to get rid of tickets. What a lot of players will do is they will kill the first floor bot, and then for the second floor bot they will remove a lot of their gear, like their outfit and whatnot, so that way they can die very quickly. This is a good way to burn through tickets if you've gotten yourself in a good place that you like. This NPC right here will give you your Tower of Infinity tickets, 2 per day, and you do not have to use these as soon as you get them. As long as that badge currency is part of the respective season, these tickets can be used. This NPC right here will give you exchange options for badges both past and present, except for the yellow badges, which you can get through other means. Now let's say hypothetically you're needing an older badge because you came into the game at a later point in time and it's very hard to find this badge currency on the market. In your Dragon Express tab, you have an exchange option to where you can get these badge boxes for solar energy. Now, the badges that you will need are going to vary between PvE and PvP in some cases, and if you're needing to know what badges to use, there are lots of links and areas to where you can ask what badges you'll need for your respective class. Arena is a gear equalized setting. There is 1v1s and 3v3s. The premise of Arena is to get your opponent to blow their tab escape, which typically has a 36-second cooldown time, and then during that time unleash all of your CCs on that opponent and your buffs, etc, and kill the person before their tab escape comes back. Now, depending on the class that you are fighting, this can be extremely difficult to accomplish because outside of the tab escape, some classes have multiple resist skills or a secondary tab that they can rely on for escaping out of CCs. Unfortunately, I do not have any 3v3 footage because for NA currently it is very dead content. Even on days to where tag is on daily challenge, it is difficult to get matches going. One thing that I can say about 3v3 is that once one opponent's team loses all 3 of their players, it is a game over. Teams are given tag points and they are given interference points. These points can be used respectfully throughout the match. So the interference points can be used for defensive or offensive measures. So say hypothetically your teammate was able to successfully make one of your opponents blow their tab super early in the match. You can actually come in as an interference and capitalize on that, providing a buff or some additional damage or CCs to help seal the deal. On the defensive side coin of that, if your teammate ended up having to blow their tab escape and they're in a bad situation, you could come in and assist, trying to provide distraction and preventing the 2 people from the opponent's team killing your teammate as quickly. So from doing 1v1 and 3v3, you are going to obtain this currency called Zen Beans. Now, the Zen Beans can be used to exchange for a wide variety of items. The main appeal of the Zen Beans, in my opinion, though, is the Hong Moon skills that you can obtain from using bloodstone fragments. Now, you can get these bloodstone fragments from exchanging in Zen Beans, and then you'll use the bloodstone fragments to get these respective skills. Now, what skills are going to be important for your class on a PvE and PvP level are going to vary from class to class. Again, there are links and places that you can go to seek out this information, but I will say that these skills on a general level are highly vital to increasing your performance, both PvE and PvP wise, and I highly recommend that you get your hands on the necessary PvP and probably PvE related skills before you even think about stepping foot into 6v6. Is 6v6 pay to win? Yes, but not to the extent that some players make it out to be. 6v6, in my opinion, becomes very pay to win if you're aiming to reach the top of the mountain or top 60 of each respective class in ratings. However, if you don't have any intentions on reaching the top of the mountain, you just want to do 6v6 for some fun, in my opinion, under 1500 rating, it's not about pay to win at that point. It's more about RNG. So below 1500, you are going to be running some players that will outgear you, but they're not exactly going to be the most skilled players. So it is possible to kill them if you do have enough gear at that particular point in time. Whereas with top 60, the skill is not going to be something that will play in your factor nearly as much because most of those players are going to know their stuff and they're going to also have the gear to back it up. Due to 6v6 being a gear driven environment, there are going to be some classes that operate radically different than what their 1v1 counter Arena and Tower of Infinity counterparts are going to operate. With that being said, there are some things that you can do as a player under the 1500 rating to better prepare yourself for these situations and not be a complete detriment to your team. So we'll start off with the weapon. The weapon, I notice a lot of players will use a PvE weapon. This is a no-go for 6v6. At the bare minimum at this point, I recommend having the Ascendant weapon or whatever is the third best in slot weapon whenever you decide to watch this video, which that holds true for now. Ascendant weapon is the third best in slot behind the Incinerator and Dragonforge. I have the same mentality with the Soul Shield set. The Beluga 8 set is the third best in slot PvP Soul Shield behind the Avenging Soul Shield set and also the Nova Core Soul Shield set. Now, as far as stat distribution points go for the Soul Shield in itself, players typically want to try to aim to roll as much accuracy and crit defense roll pieces on their set as they possibly can. Accuracy is the most important certain stat in 6v6. The reason why I say that is because this is vital for you landing your CCs, because it is possible that some of your CCs can miss your target if you don't have high enough accuracy. I believe pieces 2 and 4 are not capable of rolling crit defense, but every other piece should be able to roll crit defense. Now, as far as priming stats, this is completely subjective on this. Some people go all pierce, some people go all crit defense, and then some players roll a mixture of the two stats. So ideally, you just want to have a lot of accuracy, a lot of crit defense, and or a lot of pierce. As far as accessories go, your PvP accessories will work fine for under 1500 rating. Although I will say, if you do get your hands on PvP accessories, they can increase the potential of your performance. If there are any accessories that I would recommend really going after, it would be the ring and it would be the belt. So right now I've got the Sky Shatter ring, and I will potentially have the Sky Shatter belt at some point in the future. Basically, this or whatever is the future better ring and belt, I would recommend getting your hands on. Now, bracelet is kind of on a case-by-case basis. If the bracelet doesn't really benefit your class spec, then there's really not as much of an incentive to go after it. Also, under 1500 rating with the PvP level accessories, you don't necessarily need to level them in order to perform well. Even at stage 1, I think they'll still work pretty well, in my opinion, for under 1500. And finally, I do want to talk about something else that is a major game changer for a lot of classes, and that is going to be their legendary mystic badge. This is a very powerful badge, and it does change the gameplay style of a lot of classes. Fire KFM being just an example off the top of my head. You'll want to get your hands on this or the ET version of this badge that will be coming out in the future to increase your potential performance. As far as Hong Moon point stat distribution, a lot of players typically will have at least 50 points into defense, and the reason why they will have this is so that way they have the 50-point stat effect, which means that every time they successfully iframe something, they will recover so much percentage of their HP. This is extremely nice to have, especially if you play a class that has a lot of iframes to work with, like KFM for example, with their standard counter, their Q and E as examples. This can really increase your survivability by a lot. Now, as far as where to distribute your points beyond that, that's really subjective. Beyond that, I've seen a wide variety of things. I've seen some people put the rest of their points in offense. I've seen some people put points in health regen. I've seen some people put their healths in the debuff defense right here. So it really just varies beyond that. Here is a 6v6 PvP merchant that you can access through Mushin's Tower. This NPC, as you can tell, has a lot of items that require bloodstones, which are basically like the consolidated versions of the bloodstone fragments. If you struggle to get this currency, you can just do more arena. In my opinion, that is a little bit faster doing 1v1 than doing 6v6. Although the conversion rate from Zen Beans to bloodstone fragment isn't as good as the battle point ones, but that's still fine if you factor in the time aspect. Earlier I made a mention, and this will be outdated in the future, but as of the making of this video, if you are wanting to get your hands on Beluga 8 set to start off, you can actually get pieces 1 through 5 by killing the Sacred Longui in Midnight Sky Petal Plains, and then using that currency to buy pieces 1 through 5 of this, which is going to significantly reduce the number of bloodstones that you're going to need for this set. Also, as far as the weapon goes, you'll start off with a galaxy weapon. I do recommend using Naryu coin on these boxes until you roll a weapon with 8 slots. It's going to save you a lot of headache and grief in the future, so that's just my personal recommendation as far as that goes. So to start off with, I'm going to talk about Beluga Lagoon, my personal favorite of the 3 maps. The reason why I like this map is even if you are at a power disadvantage, you can still win the game if you strategically outplay your opponents. I can't really say that to the same extent for Whirlwind Valley or Nova Corps, but it holds a lot of truth here for Beluga Lagoon. So every few minutes, there's going to be a horn here in the middle that can be interacted with. The objective is to get these horns to your side. You get 3 horns to your side, it's an instant game over, regardless of who's in the lead, who's behind. Score is irrelevant at that point. The objective takes precedence over the score. So in the event that you're not able to get 3 horns to your side, it ends up coming down to who reaches 1800 points first. Every single kill is 30 points, and by having so many horns on your side, you will gain additional points for holding those horns in that respective spot. Now, some that I've noticed is a very common mistake under the 1500 rating is there will be these times where there's an obvious power difference and the stronger team is just whipping butt on the weaker team. But because the weaker team has like a Sin or a really sneaky player, they will start taking the opponent's horns and taking them back to their opponents. And by the time that the dominating team realizes what's going on, they're trying to scramble and recover, and the weaker team has already collected 2 horns. The third one had already popped up recently, and the weaker team ends up winning in this case because the stronger team was playing overly aggressive. If there is a Sin that's on the opponent's team, you always want to maybe keep a person back or near your horns, so that way there is some type of suppression instead of just a free horn that the Sin or the sneaky player can take. Another mistake that I've seen very common as far as this map goes is sometimes at the home base there will be an enemy target there, commonly a destroyer or a KFM that will be really just trying to slow down people's progression, and this KFM or destroyer in under 1500 rating may just be welling on people. So if you can't win that fight, don't continue to fight it. Jump over and glide instead of continuing to just fight that opponent and getting killed, because at that point you're being a detriment to your team by feeding the opponents more points, increasing their chances of winning. All right, next up is going to be Whirlwind Valley. This map has 3 different points of interest. People respectfully will refer to these points as top, middle, and bottom. Just like Beluga Lagoon, each kill is going to be worth 30 points. The ideal goal is to reach 1800. There are no other conditions that will end the match prematurely like Beluga Lagoon, and if you can maintain the same kill ratio as your opposition team and you can hold 2 of the 3 points of interest, then you'll end up winning the game. So what are some common things that you'll see here on this map is people will normally say 3 top or 4 middle, 5 bottom, and they'll be in reference to each of the 3 points on the map respectfully. You'll want to kind of keep an eye out on the chat for that, so that way you're not going into a situation where you're just going to be getting ganked by like 4 or 5 players. Just now talking about numbers, one of the biggest mistakes that I see players do is they will try hard to obtain a point when they should be more willing to go after a different point that has less of a defensive opposition. So what do I mean by that? Say hypothetically there's somebody in your chat says 4 middle, okay? So there's 4 players in the middle on the opposition, so that means at somewhere else on the map there's probably only going to be 2 players. If you continue to lose against those 4 players, it would be a better situation to kill the 2 players that are at the other point of interest. This will make things a whole lot easier on you. Also, the middle lane in general is extremely dangerous because classes that are heavy AoE driven get a boost here because there's less room to move around. So there's a higher chance you're going to get hit with those AoEs. Force Masters, Fire KFMs, Shadow Destroyers are just 3 examples I can think of off the top of my head that thrive more in this lane simply for that reason alone. Another mistake that I will see players do is there may be an individual that may be the strongest player on the team, and this player has decided that I'm going to stay at this point and defend it no matter what for the entirety of the match. This is fine if the rest of your team can handle themselves just fine, but if it's a situation, especially if you end up being one of the strongest players on the team and nobody's really coming to bother you, there's really no point in defending that point for the entirety of the match while the rest of your team is just getting slaughtered. So the ideal, especially if you're playing a class that's good at defending like Destroyer, is to make good minute-to-minute decisions. If there are players coming to try and take your point and you can hold off like 2 or 3 players, then that's great because that will give the rest of your team an advantage in numbers on the rest of the map. But if that's not the case, be willing to leave your point and help out. Again, the minute-to-minute decisions in some cases can be the difference between winning and losing. Oh, and finally, the other mistake that I will notice some teams make is that they will get too greedy. So they're obviously the stronger team, right? But they are so determined to try and take all 3 points. Whenever they start trying to take 3 points, things start really getting messy and the opposition starts killing off the teammates one by one because now they're too spread out. Sometimes it's better to not be greedy and just be satisfied just holding 2 spots, because if you get too greedy, in some cases the opposition can turn things around and you'll end up losing. losing. It's better to take the slow and steady approach on Whirlwind Valley and have a set win instead of trying to end it quickly when you can't absolutely seal the deal. Finally, we have Nova Core here. This is the newest 6v6 map, and pretty much the premise of this map is to guide these energy balls that will spawn here in the middle of the map to your home destination. Now, each team side will have 2 dials that can be altered that will change the direction of the balls, so they'll either go one way or the other, and it's important to have these dials pointing in the right direction in order to have them going to your home base, and the opposite is true to prevent the enemy team from having balls go to their side. So the thing that I personally hate about this map a lot is whoever's team is on the left, they will always have the first ball go to their side. So you're kind of set up in this predetermined attack and defense on this particular map. Now, the one thing that I will say is whenever balls are going into your home spot, it's important to watch this backside one, because every now and then there will be somebody that will try to turn it at the last minute, causing a disruption. So you may want to keep an eye out on that. If in the event that the game lasts until the 5-minute till mark, there will be a dial at your home base that will become able to be interacted with, and you'll want to keep an eye on this, because sometimes if the match lasts that long, the opponent's team will try to blitz this point and get it turned, so that way you cannot score any more points. The biggest thing here is to always check and make sure that your dials are turned in the right direction. One screw up on that can cost you the round, and I've made this mistake personally in the past. The best way to kind of figure out what direction the balls are going to be going in is look at the ground, because whatever direction the dial is going to be pointed in, there will be a light that will emulate from that, pointing in the direction that the ball will go once it hits that particular point. In fact, I actually have some gameplay footage in this video to where there was an opponent's team BM that had switched the dial into the wrong direction for some odd reason, and because of this in this particular case, this caused the whole momentum shift of the match to change in itself, allowing the team that I was on to eventually make a comeback and win. Mind you, this was somewhat fairly early in the match that when this had happened as well, so just have to make sure that stuff's pointed in the right direction. Don't really have too much to say as far as strategy and things like that, other than, make sure your dials are in the right direction.